Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Parthivi Das, the Executive Director of C2HR, and I'm excited to welcome you today's HR learning series, Rethinking Leadership and Culture in the Age of AI. Today's topic is on how AI will change leadership, collaboration, and culture. The learning series will focus on the potential impact of AI, the AI revolution on organizational culture. The next slide. C2HR is able to offer free quality educational programs for our members like today's learning series, thanks to the generous support of our 2025 sponsors, including the Lawrence Advisory. We sincerely appreciate your support. The next slide. We would like today's webinar to be interactive, so we invite you to post questions and comments in the Q&A box throughout the discussion. SHRM has approved this webinar for 1 CE credit, and the credit code will be emailed to all participants after the event. Today's featured speaker is Tracy Lawrence, the founder and CEO of the Lawrence Advisory, a leadership consulting firm that advises clients on executive recruiting, organizational development, and leadership coaching. Tracy, we can't thank you enough for taking your time today to share your insight, and so I will now turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Parthivi, and welcome to everyone. I think we're going to get started by asking a couple of poll questions so that we can just kind of see where we are, how we're getting started. The first question that you're going to see pop up on your screen is, how prepared do you feel to handle the cultural and leadership changes as an HR professional that AI will bring? And you can tell us either very prepared, somewhat prepared, or not at all prepared. Somewhat prepared. That's good. That's good. And 7% not at all prepared. Okay. And then the next question, just one more, is what are your main concerns about the coming changes with respect to HR, to AI? Yeah. Job losses. So number one is privacy issues. Job losses, obviously a big concern. And then I don't understand AI. Great. Okay. Well, that's very helpful to know where we are as we get started with this conversation. I am trying to, oh, there we go. So, rethinking leadership and culture in the age of AI. So, Parthivi gave a quick introduction to me. I am a leadership consultant with a background in the entertainment and media space. I started my career at Viacom, working in marketing at Nickelodeon, and then moved over to Fox and became general manager of a television network there, and then made a transition into doing leadership advisory work. And I give you that background because I am speaking on a daily basis with a lot of leaders in this space. We also work with other sectors as well. And I think I wanted to give this talk because it's one of the topics, AI and the rollout of AI is one of the topics that's coming up every single day as I speak with people, and I'm hearing different perspectives. So I wanted to just cover with you how we can start to think about the implications of what we're about to experience and the fact that you, as human resources professionals, are really going to be on the front lines of this transition. So these are some of the things that I hear on a daily basis. I hear a lot of senior leaders just kind of contemplating how can I use AI to reduce expenses or increase efficiencies. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the CEO of a growing organization and her COO. And the CEO was really speculating on how, very excitedly, how she could use AI to leverage efficiencies. And the COO was adamantly opposed to doing anything. And I think you do see people who are just in a place of resistance around the change. Obviously, job loss is a big concern. Can I trust it? What's it doing with all this information? And then privacy concerns. So these are some of the big ones that I'm hearing about. But it is time to plan, right? So the rollout of AI is going to be redefining, particularly leadership and culture, faster than most of us are ready for. And the waiting and the resistance is going to cause the biggest risk. It's not going to be easy, but it's time to start kind of opening our eyes and thinking about what this means for us. So in terms of a time horizon, it's pretty quick. All the estimates that I've seen from a research standpoint are estimating by between 2030 and 2035, AI will become foundational to how most companies operate. So that gives us a pretty short window to get ready. And as I mentioned, HR will become one of the most strategically important functions in an organization. And so it's really important that we begin thinking about how this is done. What I am seeing with my clients is that a lot of the larger organizations do have a team of people planning the technical aspects of HR, of AI, and what it's going to do and where it can find efficiencies, less so with focusing on culture and leadership. And I think that's going to be a really important piece. AI is absolutely going to change the way we lead and the way our ways of working. And we're looking at basically three phases of implementation. We are right now in the phase of early adoption. So the statistics are showing, anywhere you see from 25 to 35% of organizations right now, large companies, are using AI, but it tends to be in pockets. So obviously the easiest one is people are using ChatGPT for help with writing. That's the number one application. So you have within a company different pockets of or groups that are using AI for different things. The two departments that use it the most are IT and operations right now. From 2027, which is just year after next, right, to 2030, you're going to start to see enterprise level transformation. So you're going to start to see companies adopting across the entire enterprise AI applications, and that's when you're going to start to see more dramatic changes. And then somewhere between 2030 and 2035, you're going to have deeper AI integration. Now, these are just estimates. Depending on who you go to, you're going to see different estimates. And some of it is just that it remains to be seen. But I think it's important for purposes of planning to have some kind of metrics. By the way, I also wanted to say, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. Partha is checking, and we've talked about the fact that if you have any questions or comments in the even as I'm speaking, feel free. I have no problem making it more of an ongoing dialogue if people have questions. So what I think is less discussed is the fact that with the advent of AI, the very leadership competencies that are needed and that we valued are going to have to change quite dramatically as we move forward. So big picture, we're going to be moving in terms of how our leaders are showing up. We're going to be moving from what we have right now, which is leaders being defined as being an expert, directing activity, gatekeeper of information, moving more towards competencies that involve integration, inquisitor. So inquisitor meaning you have to know what questions to ask, right? Orchestrator, coordinating information, and then sense maker. Can you make sense of this voluminous amount of data that is coming your way? So that's a very different, we have to think of our leaders in a very different way moving forward. So I'm going to go through some of these other transitions that we're going to start to see. We're going to see a transition from deep expertise to adaptive learning. So the old column is where we are today, right? Right now, if I'm looking, so for example, my company does executive recruiting. If somebody comes to us and says, we're looking for a chief marketing officer, the first thing they're going to look for as they're assessing candidates is what is the experience of that person. And what clients tend to want to see is somebody who's done somewhat or exactly the type of job that they're being hired to do. So you're looking at evidence-based experience, right? Experience comes down to pattern recognition. I've seen this before. I know how to do it, and I'm going to do it again here. And that person is considered to be a mastery of workflow. So I know how to run that department. I know how each person has to work with each other. The problem with experience in terms of using it as the number one thing you're looking for in a leader is that that experience happened in a different context than what the person is moving into. So just because something worked in, 2018 does not mean it's going to work in 2030. And so we really have to think about how we're looking at the expertise of a leader. The new areas of expertise that we are going to be needing for AI integration is more on cognitive agility. So we use the word agility a lot. They have to be able to switch up and handle change at a pace that's more rapid than anything we've seen in the past. We need comfort with ambiguity. So in the past, leaders were considered strong leaders if they show up with that executive presence. I know what to do. Here's what we're doing. Well, you're not always going to know what to do in this new world because we've never experienced what we're about to experience. So there has to be a level of comfort with not knowing, right? We need to be able to work with rapidly evolving tools. Where AI is today is going to be different from where it is in 2 years. And so you need that adaptability in your leader. We need expertise in terms of integrating data, algorithms, and human insight. So you're going to have this collaboration between humans and machines. And then we need to be able to ask questions and make challenging assumptions. So I was speaking with last week the CEO of an AI startup, and he was commenting to me last week that right now, when you use AI, you better know what answer you're looking for because it's not quite in a place where you can just ask it and assume that the answer is the right answer or that the thought process is right, right? So right now, we're still in charge, but there will be a time when what is happening with AI is far beyond what we are able to fully understand. So asking the right questions and knowing how to prompt is going to be critical in this new world. So these are very different leadership skills that we're going to need. We're moving from directive leadership more towards an orchestration model, right? So right now, leadership is still pretty top down. Decisions flow through hierarchy, and there's an emphasis on controlling the process. So even leaders that are open-minded and supportive of their teams still bring structure and direction to those teams. Where we're moving to is more of kind of conductor of an orchestra, right? You're also conducting work between machines and people. So that's a very new skill set that not a lot of people have right now. You're looking at a leader who can empower teams to iterate, test, and innovate, and enabling rapid decision making without micromanaging. And again, I think one of the characteristic uh, situations that leaders are going to be facing is change happening at a much more rapid pace than what we've seen. And then you're going to need fluid teams rather than hierarchies. So we're in creative industry, right? So I wanted to address, the creative process as well. So right now, we look at creatives working with intuition-driven decision making, right? A creative, a special director, showrunner, writer is bringing a unique point of view, a unique process that they uniquely have in terms of how the world works and how they're interacting with it. And we value that. We place a big priority on finding those people who have something we think other people don't have. Creative vision is rooted in personal taste, personal experience, and we're focused on like craft-based excellence, right? This person, we know who they are because they have a really unique style. Um, the creative of the future is going to create more in conjunction with the machine, right? So that creative is also going to be integrating data, audience preference, and generative tools with human imagination. They're going to bring judgment on when to use human creativity versus an AI augment, right? So it's a different, the opportunities for creativity are exponentially broader. but it's a different way of working. You're going to need taste and technical literacy and the ability to co-create with systems. So again, very, very different processes. The other thing that I think is really interesting about the entertainment and media space is that a lot of, say development executives, people who are on creative sides of the business, working at the studios, make their careers based on relationships with the creative community. And I mean, that's one of the most highly prized thing among our senior executives in this space. Well, those relationships may evolve as well because it won't just be that particular person, it'll be that unit of a person working with a machine. So again, we don't know exactly how this is going to look, but it's going to have dramatic implications for how we work together. We're also looking at a kind of an evolution from functional expertise to more cross-disciplinary fluency. So again, like if I'm looking to, hire or promote somebody into a controller role or a senior vice president or chief financial officer, right? Up until now, we look at what do they know about finance and how well do they work in finance. But you're moving towards a system where finance, operations, marketing, creative are all going to be, those decisions can be made simultaneously and in conjunction with one another, right? So you're the executive of the future has to have that comfort working across data science, engineering, creative, audience development, operations. It's a less linear way of thinking. We're going to be needing to translate across technical and creative languages and really being able to build a team where that hybrid talent can thrive. We're moving from stability to a period of constant reinvention. And what I think is really interesting about this process as well is why do you go to work for a Fortune 100 company? You go because you like the stability and the predictability of life there and the resources that that organization brings you, right? We prioritize process consistency. And right now, a leader and strong culture will avoid disruption to workflow. But the new world will require more ability to reinvent workflows and mental models on a regular basis. You'll have short cycle transformations. So you'll have a long-term transformation, but you may have things change dramatically within a period of a year or even shorter. You'll be leading teams through change, but you'll need to provide both clarity in a time when maybe there isn't a lot of clarity and empathy for people who are experiencing dramatic change. And you'll need to embed experimentation into operating rhythms. Another transition that we'll need to make is one from guarding information to radical transparency, right? So right now, part of, senior leadership holds information because, when information gets out before it's ready to be released, that can have implications, right? So we have need to know communication, we have controlled information flows, and we have protecting intellectual property and decisions until those decisions are finalized. We're moving into a world where information is going to be more rapidly distributed and more broadly distributed. So there might be, theoretically, there would be more transparency. You're going to absolutely have to communicate on a more ongoing basis about risk. You're going to have to think about what bias might be built into these rapidly changing machines and how data is being used. We're going to have a more open dialogue with teams as their roles are evolving. And you're going to have to provide psychological safety as a leadership skill because you're going to have a lot of people who are being disrupted. And so, as a leader, you're going to have to show up and provide some stability to those people. Another one is moving from personal authority to social influence. So, as we move into this new world, right now we're looking at authority within an organization is derived from your title, your experience, and your power within the organization. And oftentimes your influence is rooted in your proximity to those who are most powerful within the organization. What we're moving more towards is your ability to influence through communication narrative and trust, your ability to inspire teams that are navigating uncertainty, and your social leadership that aligns people with objectives. And that's going to be a big one as we try and figure out, how to align our cultures with what we're trying to accomplish. So that's a lot of change. And the team, the folks who are on this call are going to be playing a very active role in being the architects of that change. We're looking at change management at a scale that we've never really seen before. You're looking at shorter and more frequent communication cycles. You're looking at ideally developing reusable playbooks for new tools. Reusable because things are going to be constantly changing, but we can develop some parameters that we can always check in on. And then change as a continuous capability. So change isn't just something that's going to happen and it's over and then you move on. Change is going to be a constant, certainly over the next decade. And by the way, this doesn't even include some of the change that you're already experiencing with all the mergers, the acquisitions, all the changes that are happening in the industry even today. So there's a new role for HR, right? HR will be building the leadership pipeline with a new generation of leaders who are bringing very dramatically different skill sets. HR will be the translator between tech and the workforce and the guardian of human-centered adoption. So how we handle these transitions from an organizational culture standpoint is going to be critical to whether we're able to achieve transformation. And there's going to be a lot of managing cultural friction, right? So uncertainty is going to be the name of the game. I mean, we've already got it right now. It's going to increase. We need to strengthen our feedback loops so that we are in touch with what's going on with our workforce. We need to encourage controlled experimentation so that people are open-minded to things changing and finding the best solutions, and then align incentives with collaboration. And we're going to have to see collaboration at new levels, bigger than what we've seen today. And so we're looking at building cultures that will enable progress, right? So high trust, transparent communication, those are going to be really important, but difficult. I mean, it's really, really hard to generate trust in a population of people when they know that things are about to change and they don't know what that means for them. So that's a pretty big trick to pull off within an organization. There's got to be a bias for learning and iteration. Again, cross-functional collaboration, and then shared language, principles, understandings around what it is that we're trying to accomplish with AI usage. And what we do with our culture is going to play a major factor in our ability to be successful with AI, right? So AI implementation, you've got the tools, those tools are being developed. A lot of it's going to be the behavior and how we're interacting and what we're doing around it. A low trust culture is going to resist adoption. That is not just an enterprise-wide issue, it could be a department by department issue as well. So we really need to look at our cultures and figure out what they need from us in order to thrive. And then teams, they're going to need psychological safety to experiment, try new things. It has huge implications for recruiting, right? Because I just outlined how we're really going to be looking at different things from our leaders than what we've had in the past. We've got to learn to hire for potential and adaptability. That is very different from, as a recruiter, I can tell you, the normal recruiting process that we go through right now. we have to be able to assess things like curiosity and flexibility. That is not necessarily something that the traditional job interview can pull out of a candidate. We need to look at ongoing reskilling of our workforce. So the skills that someone in the department that you're working in have right now, they're going to have to be continuously updated. And we need to look at developing relational intelligence as a top criteria for future success. These are very different from where we are today. We need to look at our leadership development model. So leadership development, when you look at the industry of leadership development programs, they are not geared towards developing these skill sets at all, right? We need to look at scenario-based learning over task-based training, which is kind of what we've got now. We need to look at developing career accelerators and capability academies that teach people the new ways of working. And we need to look at giving people earlier exposure to cross-functional decision making. We definitely will be facing an issue with our pipeline, with our leadership pipeline, right? So even today, there have been a number of companies that have announced that they are scaling back on their entry-level training programs. So I just read an article about how a lot of the consulting firms that have like these 2-year programs, they hire people fresh out of business school, and traditionally what they've done is a lot of analysis, right? Or like a paralegal program, that kind of thing. A lot of those are the first jobs to go because they're easier for AI to step in. So that's fine. You can do that and save costs. But then how do people get the training to become that vice president or executive vice president level if they don't start with doing that earlier work? So that's definitely a problem that we're going to have to address. You're going to have fewer apprenticeship programs, fewer of these entry-level work. And so we're going to have to figure out how do you develop a pipeline of excellent leaders when they don't have that early experience. And you may end up with a risk of people moving up the ranks who can't really model the work for those coming up behind them. So what do we do? What do we not do? Here's what we not do. Here's what we don't do. We don't treat AI. I actually have clients right now that are saying, well, IT is figuring it out. This is not just the technical aspects of it, maybe IT can figure out, but this is an enterprise-wide transformation of an organization that we're looking at. You don't wait for perfect clarity because it's not going to come. You don't under communicate during uncertainty. I always tell people that I work with, if you've got a time of uncertainty, you actually want to communicate more, even if all you're saying is no update today. But you want your workforce to understand that you're going to be straightforward with them and you're going to let them know as soon as you have answers. So you build trust. You do not want to ignore the emotional impact on employees. We saw in the upfront survey, people are worried about job loss. That is a legitimate concern. Um, Middle managers are that group within organizations that are hit the hardest by all of these changes, right? So downsizing tends to hit middle managers first. So now you've got middle managers under the greatest stress because they're being asked to do the jobs of 2 and 3 people in the midst of downsizing. So you've already got that stress. They are also going to be hit probably first with absorbing some of these changes with AI. So you really want to pay attention to that level within your organization. And finally, the strategic opportunity for you as HR professionals is huge, right? So you're going to have a tremendous influence over how this all happens. HR becomes the architect of the transformation of the organization. Culture is kind of the background of all of this. It becomes your competitive differentiator. How is your culture going to evolve as in a way that's going to allow you to do this in a way that's better for your workforce, your customers, your leaders? And then how will you personally evolve as a leader of this process. I guess if I have any final thoughts to leave you with is to really start thinking about yourself, your career, and what role you really want to play as we tackle this exciting and kind of crazy time that we're walking into. So that's what I have. I did want to post the continuing education claim code. So because I know for those of you who are want to claim continuing education, and then see if there were any questions.
So thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing this information. We do have a question from David. What companies or industries are considered the leading indicators of where AI is going for HR? Just wondering where to look to get a glimpse into the future.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. I think right now, I think we're still so early. I don't know that there's anyone, honestly, that I would point to. I think you could look at the tech companies, um, but I don't know that what they're doing would be considered exemplary right now. And so I think, sadly, I think we're still in a kind of wait and see place because we're still so early in the process of the evolution of AI. I don't think we're quite there yet.
If anyone else has questions, please do post them in the Q&A.
Yeah. And if not, um, we can wrap if there are no other questions. What I would just say is feel free if you ever want to, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to engage in additional conversations around this. But I think, look, I wanted to bring this to all of your attention because it's definitely going to be something we're going to be dealing with and more questions than answers right now, but it's going to be a really exciting time. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Parthavi.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for today's HR Learning Series. And thank you all for being a part of today's HR Learning Series as well. And hope you all have a good rest of your week. And we will see you all in the new year when we have some more programs to offer for C2HR. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.